The story of humanity, as we are told, is a straight line, a simple, elegant progression from the darkness of antiquity into the light of the modern age. We chart our course from the first sharpened stone to the controlled fire, from the invention of the wheel to the soaring cathedrals of glass and steel. It's a comforting narrative, a steady, predictable climb from ignorance to enlightenment. Our history books present this timeline as settled fact, a map of the past that is clear and complete. But what if it isn't? What if, lying in the shadows of this accepted history, there are things that simply don't belong? In the quiet archives of museums and buried deep within the earth, certain objects have been found. Relics of impossible engineering, fragments of a forgotten science. They are the glitches in our timeline, artifacts so sophisticated, so bafflingly advanced, they appear to be echoes from a future that had not yet been written. These are the uncomfortable questions that mainstream history often chooses to ignore. Are these anomalies merely misinterpretations, or are they something more? Could they be vestiges of a lost chapter of the human story, evidence of civilizations that rose to incredible heights only to be erased by time and catastrophe? This is not a journey to debunk science, but to expand its horizons, to look at the evidence that lies just beyond the edges of our conventional understanding. We are about to enter a gallery of the unexplained, a museum of impossible things. And our first exhibit awaits, not in a dusty hall, but in the cold, silent depths of the sea, where a discovery was made that would forever change our perception of the ancient mind.
In the year 1900, off the jagged coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, a group of sponge divers made a discovery that would forever alter our perception of the ancient world. Seeking shelter from a violent storm, they stumbled upon the sunken remains of a Roman-era cargo ship, its treasures scattered across the seabed for 2 millennia. At first, the finds were astounding but expected. Bronze and marble statues, elegant glassware, and pottery. But amongst the priceless art, a diver surfaced with a corroded, calcified lump of bronze no larger than a modern laptop. It was dismissed as a worthless piece of rock or a fragment of a statue and set aside. For years, it sat in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, an unremarkable footnote to a spectacular find. For decades, the mainstream view was simple. The object, if it was anything at all, was likely a primitive navigational tool, perhaps an astrolabe. The historical consensus was clear. Ancient civilizations, for all their philosophical and architectural genius, possessed a rudimentary understanding of mechanics. They built with levers, pulleys, and brute force. The concept of complex, interlocking gear trains designed for precise calculation was a product of the European Renaissance, first appearing in the great astronomical clocks of the 14th century. The lump of bronze from Antikythera, therefore, couldn't be anything more. It was an artifact constrained by the perceived limits of its time. The established chronology of technology was a solid, unshakable foundation, and this strange object had to fit within it. To suggest otherwise was to venture into fantasy. But the object refused to conform. In 1951, a historian of science named Derek de Sola Price began a decades-long obsession with the artifact. He sensed something was wrong with the accepted story, that within the corroded mass lay a secret that history had forgotten. His initial examinations hinted at something extraordinary: faint inscriptions and the unmistakable outline of a gear wheel. However, It wasn't until the advent of advanced imaging technology, high-resolution X-rays, and computed tomography, or CT scans, that the true nature of the device was revealed. And the revelation was breathtaking. This was not a simple tool. This was a machine of almost unbelievable complexity. Hidden inside were no fewer than 37 interlocking bronze gears, arranged in a sophisticated system that modeled the cosmos with a precision that was frankly impossible. The gears were hand-cut with triangular teeth, meshing together perfectly to track the movements of the sun, the moon, and the 5 planets known to the ancient Greeks. A dial on the front displayed the Greek zodiac and an Egyptian calendar, while dials on the back held the key to its genius.
One dial predicted lunar and solar eclipses with stunning accuracy using the Saros cycle, a complex 223-month astronomical period. Another tracked the dates of the Pan-Hellenic Games, including the Olympics. Most astonishingly, it incorporated a differential gear, a device so complex that historians believed it wasn't invented until the 16th century. This differential was used to accurately calculate the subtle, shifting phases of the moon. This was not just a clock, it was a portable, mechanical universe, an analog computer built 1,500 years before its time. The mainstream view was not just challenged, it was shattered. The question was no longer what it was, but how it could possibly exist. So, if this wasn't a singular miracle, what was it? The evidence points toward a possibility that is almost more staggering, that the Antikythera mechanism is not an anomaly, but the last surviving relic of a lost technological tradition. We have texts that speak of the great mathematician Archimedes of Syracuse constructing bronze spheres that demonstrated the motions of the celestial bodies. The Roman statesman Cicero described seeing such a device, marveling at how a single contrivance could replicate the divine movements of the heavens. For centuries, these accounts were considered exaggerated tales, the stuff of myth. But the Antikythera mechanism proves they were real. It suggests that Hellenistic Greece possessed a school of mechanical engineering far more advanced than we have ever dared to imagine, a tradition that understood and applied complex astronomical cycles and could translate them into intricate predictive machinery. This device wasn't built by a lone, unknown genius who worked in isolation. It was the product of accumulated knowledge, of generations of scientists and craftsmen whose other works have all vanished. They were likely lost to the ages, melted down for their bronze, destroyed in fires like the one that consumed the Library of Alexandria, or resting in other yet undiscovered shipwrecks. The mechanism is not the beginning of the story, it's the end. It's the sole survivor of a world of lost wonders. The Antikythera mechanism stands as a silent rebuke to our chronological arrogance. It is a ghost from a past far more brilliant than we knew, a mechanical masterpiece that resets the timeline of human ingenuity. It proves that a crucial stream of ancient knowledge was not passed down but was utterly lost, and that humanity had to spend another 1,000 years painstakingly rediscovering what the Greeks had already mastered. It forces us to wonder what other knowledge, what other incredible technologies vanished in the collapse of the ancient world. The Greeks, it is now clear, could map the cosmos with clockwork and bronze. But did the genius of the ancient world stop there, or could other cultures in another corner of the globe have taken the next step, not just predicting the forces of nature, but attempting to command them? Our journey now takes us from the gears of Greece to the sands of Mesopotamia, where a simple clay pot holds a secret that whispers of an even more impossible power.
The gears of the Antikythera device revere a mastery of the cosmos, a mechanical precision that shouldn't exist. But what if the forgotten genius of the ancient world wasn't limited to just clockwork and astronomy? What if they had discovered the key to an even more fundamental, more mysterious force of nature? Our journey now takes us from the Aegean Sea to the sun-scorched plains of Mesopotamia, to a place once known as Parthia, where in 1936, railway workers unearthed a discovery so humble it was almost missed. It was a small, unassuming terracotta jar, just 6 inches tall. And inside was an enigma that would spark a century of debate. To a casual observer, the object is unremarkable. Archaeologists cataloged it as the Baghdad Battery, and for many, the story ended there. The official mainstream explanation is that this jar and others like it were simply vessels for storing sacred texts. The copper cylinder inside, they argue, was a protective sheath for a papyrus or parchment scroll, and the iron rod was merely a pin to hang it from. Any acidic residue found within is explained away as the natural decomposition of the scroll itself. Miles away, in the land of the pharaohs, a similar academic certainty surrounds a series of reliefs carved into the walls of a crypt in the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. Here we see figures holding massive, transparent, bulb-like objects. Inside each bulb, a long, wavy snake is depicted. Mainstream Egyptology interprets this scene through a purely mythological lens. It is, they state, a creation myth, symbolizing the birth of the serpent god Harsammatus from a lotus flower, a primordial symbol of creation. The scene is a metaphor, a beautiful and complex piece of religious art, and nothing more. The established narrative insists that both the jar and the carving are products of their time, to be understood through the lens of religion and ritual, not science. But look closer. The Baghdad jar's construction tells a different story. The iron rod is suspended precisely in the center of the copper cylinder, never touching it, and sealed at the top with a plug of bitumen or asphalt, a known insulator. This careful arrangement seems overly complex for a simple scroll holder. In 1938, Wilhelm Koenig, the German director of the National Museum of Iraq, dared to ask a forbidden question. What if this wasn't a container? What if it was a device? He noted its striking resemblance to a galvanic cell, the basis of all modern batteries. If you fill this simple jar with an acidic substance, like grape juice or vinegar, both common in ancient Parthia, the two different metals, iron and copper, react to create an electrolyte solution. The result is a small but consistent electrical charge. Modern replicas of the Baghdad battery have been built, and they work. They generate a steady current of between 0.5 and 1.5 volts. It's not much, but it's enough to power something. And it's enough to cast serious doubt on the sacred scroll theory. That doubt intensifies when you return to the temple at Dendera. The mythological explanation begins to fray when you examine the relief's technical details. The lotus flower at the base of the bulb looks less like a flower and more like a socket for a modern electrical insulator. The snake, with its wavy form, is eerily reminiscent of the plasma filament seen in early electrical discharge devices like a Crookes tube. The bulb itself is connected by what looks exactly like a braided cable to a rectangular box, an object known as a jed pillar. In this context, the jed pillar with its stacked layers looks less like a symbol for stability and more like a source of power or a high-voltage insulator. The so-called Dendera light isn't just a strange carving, it is a stunningly accurate schematic for a large-scale electrical lamp.
So what could this ancient electricity have been used for? The voltage from a single Baghdad battery is low, but what if they weren't used alone? Linked together in series, dozens of these jars could produce a significant electrical current, more than enough for a process called electrogilding or electroplating. This is a method where electricity is used to apply a micro-thin, perfect layer of gold or silver onto a less precious metal. It was a form of alchemical magic, a way to create stunning, shimmering artifacts that would have seemed miraculous to the uninitiated. This provides a practical, functional explanation for the batteries that the scroll theory lacks. The Dendera reliefs, then, might not be a blueprint for a literal light bulb used to illuminate the temple. Instead, they could be a sacred, symbolic record of this secret knowledge. The priests of ancient Egypt were the keepers of wisdom, of science, medicine, and astronomy. The harnessing of this invisible energy would have been their most profound secret, a divine power not meant for the masses. The relief was their way of documenting this power, hiding a scientific diagram within a mythological story, preserving the knowledge for future initiates while shielding it from the common eye. It was a blueprint, hidden in plain sight. Taken together, the Baghdad battery and the Dendera light paint a tantalizing picture. They suggest that our ancestors, in isolated pockets of genius, had stumbled upon the foundational principles of electricity over 2,000 years before Volta and Galvani. This knowledge, like that of the Antikythera builders, was likely a closely guarded secret, held by an elite few. And like all fragile knowledge, it was lost, submerged in the tides of war, conquest, and the burning of libraries, forcing humanity to start over from the very beginning. The evidence is not conclusive, but it is deeply compelling. It whispers of a past where the forces of nature were not just worshipped, but perhaps in some small way understood and harnessed. They charted the stars with gears of bronze and may have tamed the lightning in a simple clay jar. But did the ambition of the ancients have a limit? Or did they look to the birds, soaring on the desert thermals, and not just see them as messengers of the gods, but as masters of a domain they too wished to conquer? Our quest for answers now takes us from the temple crypts into the open sky. The knowledge of the ancients, it seems, was not confined to the earth. They looked to the heavens, and with gears of bronze, they mapped the intricate dance of the cosmos. They may have even drawn power from the ether, capturing it in simple jars of clay. But there is another celestial domain, one much closer to home, that has always captivated the human spirit: the sky itself. The dream of flight is as old as humanity, and in the silent tombs and lost cities of the world, there is tantalizing evidence that this was not just a dream, but a science. Our journey begins in 1898, in a tomb near the Egyptian necropolis of Saqqara. Among the usual funerary items, archaeologists found a small, 6-inch object carved from sycamore wood. With a bird-like head and wings, it was cataloged as a wooden bird figure, probably a child's toy or a votive offering to the falcon-headed god Horus, and then placed in a storage box in the Cairo Museum, where it was forgotten. Half a world away, in the mountains of Colombia, tombs of a pre-Columbian culture known as the Quimbaya yielded a collection of exquisite golden objects. Among them were a dozen small figurines, just 2 inches long. With their delta-shaped wings and distinct tails, they were officially classified as zoomorphic figures, stylized representations of the birds, insects, or flying fish native to the region. To mainstream archaeology, the case for both the Egyptian bird and the Colombian figures was closed. They were charming, primitive art, their unusual shapes simply the product of artistic license. But these objects are not what they seem. The Saqqara bird sat in its box for over 70 years until it was rediscovered by Dr. Khalil Masiha, an Egyptologist and, crucially, an expert in building model aircraft.
he immediately recognized that this was no ordinary carving. He noticed its wings were shaped like a modern airfoil, curved on the top and flat on the bottom, a specific design that generates lift. The wings also possessed a distinct dihedral angle, tilting slightly upward from the body, a feature used in modern aircraft to provide stability in flight. Most strangely, it had a vertical tail fin, like a rudder, something no actual bird possesses. Dr. Masiha built a replica, added the likely missing horizontal tail wing or elevator, and threw it. It didn't just fall, it glided perfectly through the air. This was not a toy, it was a highly sophisticated glider. The Columbian insects present an even greater challenge to the mainstream view. They bear little resemblance to any known flying creature in nature. Instead, they look uncannily like modern aircraft. They possess upright, vertical stabilizers or tail fins, which are hallmarks of man-made flying machines, not animals. Their wings are not feathered or membranous, they are geometric delta-shaped wings, a design favored for supersonic jets. In the 1990s, German aeronautical engineers Peter Belting and Konrad Lubers created scaled-up radio-controlled models of the most famous of these gold-foil jets. The results were stunning. The models flew, not just clumsily, but with remarkable stability and aerodynamic grace. The so-called stylized insects were in fact perfectly designed flying machines.
So what are we to make of these artifacts? The alternative theory is as startling as it is logical. These were not mere trinkets. They were evidence of a lost ancient understanding of the principles of flight. They demonstrate a knowledge of concepts we believe were only discovered in the modern era: lift, thrust, airfoil design, and the crucial role of stabilizers for controlled flight. The Saqqara bird may have been a small-scale model, a prototype for a much larger glider. The Kimbaya artifacts, too, could be miniature representations of actual flying machines, either witnessed or conceptualized. This does not mean the ancient Egyptians or Columbians had airports and passenger jets, but it strongly implies they were true aeronautical pioneers. They were observing, experimenting, and encoding their knowledge into these small, durable forms. They were creating blueprints for the sky, silent testaments to a science that history has completely forgotten. Just as the Antikythera mechanism is the last remnant of a lost mechanical tradition, these objects may be the last vestiges of a lost aerodynamic one. From two continents, separated by an ocean of water and thousands of years of time, the message is the same. The pull of the sky was a powerful force for our ancestors, and they answered its call with a scientific rigor we are only now beginning to appreciate. Their knowledge, painstakingly acquired, was ultimately lost, forcing future generations, from Leonardo da Vinci to the Wright brothers, to begin the long journey of discovery all over again. They built machines to track the heavens, devices that may have created power, and models that could conquer the air. The genius of the ancients seems to be written in bronze, gold, and wood. But what if their most profound secrets were not encoded in machines at all, but were carved into a material so perfect, so impossibly pure, that modern technology itself struggles to explain how it was even made?
We have seen ancient genius written in the language of machines, in the complex gears of astronomical clocks, in the elegant aerodynamics of gliders. But the final artifacts on our journey are not machines at all. They are silent, enigmatic, and hauntingly beautiful. They speak not of mechanics, but of a mastery over matter so profound it borders on the supernatural. They are the crystal skulls. Carved from solid blocks of one of the Earth's hardest minerals, they are objects that, according to our understanding of the past, simply should not exist. The story of the crystal skulls is a modern legend, woven from tales of jungle ruins and mystical powers. The most famous of all, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, was allegedly discovered in the 1920s by a young Anna Mitchell-Hedges in the ancient Mayan city of Luba-Antun in Belize. It is an anatomically perfect replica of a human skull, carved from a single, flawless piece of quartz crystal, its detachable jaw moving as if on a hinge. For decades, it and others like it were presented as sacred relics of the Maya or Aztec civilizations. However, the view from mainstream science and archaeology is unambiguous. After extensive analysis of the skulls in their collections, institutions like the British Museum and the Smithsonian have concluded that they are modern creations. Microscopic examination, they say, reveals telltale marks left by high-speed, diamond-tipped rotary tools, technology that was only available in the late 19th century. Furthermore, the quartz for many of the skulls has been traced not to Mesoamerica, but to Brazil or Madagascar. The consensus is that they are masterful but modern forgeries, likely crafted in Germany and sold to eager collectors by a single notorious antiquities dealer named Eugene Bobin. To science, the mystery is solved. But the mystery refuses to die. And at the heart of its endurance is the one skull that continues to defy easy explanation, the Mitchell-Hedges skull. While other skulls clearly show the circular striations of modern carving wheels, proponents claim that under the same microscopic scrutiny, the Mitchell-Hedges skull shows nothing. Its surface is perfectly smooth, with no discernible tool marks of any kind. The skeptical explanation is that the forger simply polished the marks away. But to achieve such a flawless finish on a material as hard as quartz would be a monumental undertaking even with modern equipment. The true enigma, however, lies in its very construction. Quartz crystal is notoriously difficult to work with. It is incredibly hard, but also brittle. It has a natural axis of symmetry, and any attempt to carve against this axis with force is almost guaranteed to shatter the entire block. Yet the crystal skulls, particularly the Mitchell-Hedges example, are carved with a complete disregard for this fundamental law of physics. It is a single, continuous piece, sculpted as if the crystal's internal structure didn't exist. In the 1970s, the skull was allegedly studied by conservator Frank Dorland, who then sent it to the labs of Hewlett-Packard, a world leader in crystal technology at the time. The reported, though unofficial, conclusion was staggering. The lab could find no evidence of modern tooling and stated that, given its properties, the skull had to have been painstakingly carved and then polished with a slurry of sand and water. They estimated that using such primitive methods, this process would have required an unbroken, continuous effort of at least 300 man-years. It is a feat of patience and perfection that strains credulity.
So if it is not a modern forgery, what is it? The alternative theory proposes that the skull is exactly what the legends claim, a genuine artifact of a lost civilization, one that possessed a technology we do not understand. Perhaps they did not use brute force. Perhaps they had mastered a different way of working with crystal, a science that has since vanished. Theories range from the use of focused sonic vibrations to dissolve the crystal surface, to advanced chemical processes, or even a form of direct mental influence over matter. This would explain the impossible carving and the lack of tool marks. The skull would not be a sculpture in the traditional sense, but the product of a lost science. The legends that the skulls are repositories of ancient knowledge take on a new meaning. In this view, they are not just mystical objects, but perhaps a form of ancient hard drive, their crystalline matrix encoded with information, waiting for a consciousness advanced enough to read it. The skull is not just a carving of a head. It is a technology housed within a symbolic form. The crystal skulls remain one of the most polarizing mysteries in archaeology. To skeptics, they are nothing more than clever hoaxes, beautiful fakes, that prey on our desire to believe in a romantic, mystical past. But to others, they are tangible proof of a forgotten wisdom, a challenge to the very foundations of our technological timeline. They are either elaborate lies, or they are masterpieces from a civilization so advanced we cannot even begin to comprehend their methods. We have seen machines that map the stars, whispers of forgotten power, models that conquered the air, and now artifacts carved with impossible precision. Each object is a question mark, a crack in the smooth, linear story of our past. So what does it all mean? What happens when we step back and look at all these impossible things, not as isolated curiosities, but as pieces of a single, coherent, and utterly astonishing puzzle?
Our journey is at its end. We have walked through a museum of the impossible, a collection of artifacts that whisper of a past far more complex than we ever imagined. We began in the depths of the sea, where a tangle of bronze gears revealed a knowledge of the cosmos that would be lost for 1,500 years. We traveled to the sands of the desert, where simple clay pots and cryptic temple carvings hinted at a forgotten mastery of electrical energy. We looked to the sky, where small, unassuming models of wood and gold proved that the dream of flight was not just an idle fantasy, but an ancient science. And finally, we stared into the flawless depths of crystal, into objects carved with a precision that defies our modern understanding of technology. These are not just isolated curiosities. They are data points on a new map of human history. They suggest that the steady, linear march of progress we are taught in school is a fiction. The real story of humanity may be a far more dramatic cycle of breathtaking ascents and catastrophic falls. Knowledge is not a permanent flame. It is a fragile candle, and the winds of time have extinguished it more than once. The Antikythera mechanism, the Dendra light, the Saqqara bird, the crystal skulls, they are the last embers of those forgotten fires, proof that brilliant civilizations reached incredible peaks of scientific and technical achievement only to be erased from our collective memory. What this journey teaches us, more than anything, is a lesson in humility. It reminds us that we, in our modern age, do not stand at the absolute pinnacle of human achievement. We are simply the beneficiaries of the most recent cycle of discovery. We are a civilization with amnesia, slowly rediscovering the genius of our ancestors. The Earth is an old place, and it holds its secrets close. The ultimate question these artifacts force us to ask is a profound one. If these are the wonders that have been found by chance, what else still lies buried beneath the dust of millennia? What unwritten chapters of the human story are still waiting in the silent darkness for us to find them?
Beneath our feet, the world is a silent witness. Each layer of soil and stone is a page in a colossal book, a geological library holding the memory of Earth itself. We have read this book and written a history from its contents, a familiar story of humanity's slow and steady ascent from primitive tools to the marvels of the modern age. It is a neat linear progression taught in every school and accepted by mainstream science. But what if some of the pages are out of order? What if, deep within strata of rock that are millions of years old, objects are found that simply should not exist? Anomalies, crafted with intelligent design, sealed in a time before the first human was thought to have walked the earth. These are the uncomfortable artifacts, the unsettling evidence that suggests the story we tell ourselves is incomplete. These discoveries are not just curiosities. They are profound challenges to the established timeline of civilization. They are whispers from a past so deep it has been almost entirely erased, hinting at cycles of history,
of incredible technological peaks and devastating falls, long before our own recorded story began. Tonight, we journey deep underground into mines, quarries, and sealed rock formations to open the Earth's forbidden archives. Our investigation begins with an object so perplexing it defies all convention, a piece of advanced machinery found locked inside a stone that is 500,000 years old. It is an artifact that asks a terrifyingly simple question: who was making spark plugs before humanity had even mastered fire?
The Corso Range of California is an arid, unforgiving landscape. It is a place of sun-scorched mountains and silent, sprawling plains, where the passage of time is measured not in years, but in geological epochs. It was here, in February of 1961, that 3 amateur geologists were searching for geodes, those unassuming, hollow rocks which sometimes hide a breathtaking interior of sparkling crystals. One particular specimen they collected felt different. It was heavy and seemed to contain something solid within. Back at their workshop, they secured the rock and prepared a diamond-tipped saw to slice it open. But instead of the gentle grind of cutting through stone, the saw blade screeched against something unyielding, something that had no business being there. When they finally broke it open, they stared in disbelief. There, perfectly centered in the geode, was not a cavity of amethyst or quartz, but a man-made object. It consisted of a central metal shaft encased in a sleeve of what appeared to be white porcelain, which was in turn surrounded by a hexagonal casing. It was a piece of intricate, machined technology, fossilized in stone. To the modern eye, the object bore an uncanny resemblance to a 20th century spark plug. And for mainstream science, this is precisely what it was. The accepted explanation is straightforward. The object was likely a spark plug from a mining engine used in the area in the early 1900s. Over many decades, water laden with iron oxides washed over the discarded plug, forming a hard, rock-like shell called a concretion around it. According to this view, the discoverers simply mistook this rapidly formed concretion for a much older geode. It's a tidy explanation that requires no rewriting of history, a simple case of mistaken identity. But the story of the Corso artifact is not so easily dismissed. The discoverers, who were experienced rockhounds, insisted it was a genuine geode, not a simple concretion. More importantly, they consulted a professional geologist who, after examining the specimen, made a staggering claim. The geologist dated the age of the geode's outer shell to be at least 500,000 years old. The implication was unthinkable. A machined object requiring advanced knowledge of metallurgy and electricity, existing 500,000 years before the dawn of Homo sapiens.
Further investigation only deepened the mystery. X-rays were taken of the artifact, revealing its internal structure with haunting clarity. The central metal pin, the porcelain insulator, and the hexagonal casing were all visible. But the images also showed something more. What appeared to be a tiny spring or helix at the upper end of the device, a feature not consistent with the 1920s era champion spark plug to which it was compared. It was a machine, to be sure, but perhaps not one of our own. The greatest challenge to skeptics, however, is the fact that we can no longer study it. Sometime around 1969, the Corso artifact vanished. It has never been seen since, leaving behind only the original photographs, the perplexing X-rays,
and a profound unanswered question. Without the object, we are left to speculate on its extraordinary origins. If we take the geologists' dating seriously, we must confront the possibility of a lost ancient civilization, a culture that rose to industrial heights in the Pleistocene era, a full 500,000 years before the first cities of Sumeria, only to be completely erased from the planet's memory, leaving behind only this single inexplicable remnant. Other, more fringe theories point to even stranger possibilities: an object dropped by a time traveler, or even wreckage from an extraterrestrial visitor left to fossilize over uncountable millennia. The Koso artifact is not just a singular puzzle. It is a potent symbol of a past that may be radically different from what we believe. It suggests that history is not a straight line of progress, but a series of grand, forgotten cycles of incredible achievement and ruin. So we are left with an enigma locked in stone. Was it merely a modern piece of junk fused inside a lump of rust and mistakenly identified by hopeful amateurs? Or was it something more? A genuine artifact from a lost epoch of intelligence on Earth? A piece of evidence so dangerous to the conventional timeline of history that it was, conveniently, lost forever? The mystery of a spark plug before fire is unsettling enough. But what if other artifacts point to intelligent craftsmanship from an even deeper past? Our journey now takes us from the rock of ancient California to the primordial mines of South Africa, to examine perfectly formed spheres that are said to come not from the age of humanity, but from the dawn of the Earth itself.
In the heart of South Africa lie geological formations of almost unimaginable antiquity. We are not speaking of millions, but of billions of years. Here in the pyrophyllite mines near Ottosdal, workers blast through Precambrian bedrock, strata that were laid down when the Earth was still a hostile alien world, and the only life was a simple scum of single-celled organisms. For decades, as they've carved into this primordial stone, they have found things that should not be there. They are small, metallic-looking spheres. Hundreds of them have been recovered over the years, ranging in size from a few millimeters to several inches in diameter. Some are a solid bluish metal with flecks of white. Others are hollow, filled with a strange, spongy substance that turns to dust when exposed to air. But their most remarkable and unnerving feature is the one that defies any simple explanation. Many of them are encircled by 1, 2, or even 3 perfectly parallel grooves running around their equator as if carved on a lathe. They were found encased in a rock layer dated to an astonishing 2.8 billion years old. The mainstream scientific explanation is, on the surface, quite logical. Geologists classify these objects as natural formations, called concretions. The theory posits that in ancient wet sediments, minerals like pyrite or hematite naturally precipitate molecule by molecule around a tiny nucleus, like a grain of sand. Over immense periods, this process can form a nearly perfect sphere. The parallel grooves, scientists argue, are simply the impression of the fine-grained layers of sediment, the laminae, in which the spheres formed. In short, they are a geological illusion, a pseudo-artifact created by nature that merely mimics the appearance of intelligent design. But the deeper one looks at the so-called Klerksdorp spheres, the more the natural explanation begins to fray. Rolf Marx, the former curator of the local Klerksdorp Museum who had accumulated many of these objects, noted their baffling physical properties. He described them as being so perfectly balanced that they would not move from their center of gravity, even on a vibrating surface. He famously claimed one sphere was tested and found to be balanced to within 100,000th of an inch, a level of precision that modern technology struggles to achieve.
typically seen only in things like aerospace gyroscopes. And then there are the grooves. Can random sedimentary layering truly account for multiple, equidistant, perfectly parallel lines carved into the surface of a sphere? To an objective observer, they look less like geological strata and more like a deliberate engraving, either for function or decoration. The sheer hardness of the spheres, purportedly far greater than the pyrophyllite in which they are embedded, also raises serious questions about their formation. They feel less like a product of slow, gentle sedimentation and more like something manufactured.
If these spheres are not natural, the implications are almost too vast to comprehend. It would mean that an intelligent species capable of advanced metallurgy and precision engineering existed on Earth 2.8 billion years ago. This was a time before the first complex cells, before plants, before fish, before even the dinosaurs. It would be evidence of an intelligence so ancient it predates nearly the entire fossil record. Were these objects simple tools? Ball bearings for some colossal machine? Or perhaps something more sinister? Perfectly balanced ammunition for a weapon used in a planetary war we can't even imagine. The Klerksdorp spheres push the idea of a lost history beyond the story of humanity entirely. They hint at a deep, alien past for the planet itself, a chronicle of intelligence that may have risen and fallen long before our distant ancestors were anything more than chemical reactions in the primordial sea. So we are left with these impossible relics from the dawn of time. Are they a magnificent trick of geology? A coincidence of chemistry and pressure that forged near-perfect, grooved spheres? Or are they the last, silent remnants of a world that existed before ours? An unsettling proof that we are not the first intelligence to call this planet home. The precision of these spheres speaks to a mastery of form. But other discoveries from a more recent, yet still impossibly ancient time, suggest not just a mastery of form, but of function. Our next artifact was not found by miners in primordial rock, but was blasted out of a solid stone formation, a strange metallic bell that rings with the mystery of an impossible timeline.
In 1852, the town of Dorchester, Massachusetts, was a place of explosive industry. At Meeting House Hill, workers were blasting their way through a colossal deposit of what is known as Roxbury puddingstone. This is not ordinary rock. It's a Precambrian geological conglomerate, a chaotic fusion of stone fragments formed an estimated 600 million years ago, long before the first complex life crawled upon the land. Following one particularly powerful blast, as the dust and smoke began to clear, the workers noticed something extraordinary amidst the shattered rubble. There, in two halves, lay a small, metallic, bell-shaped vessel, an object that had, by all accounts, been blasted out from the inside of the solid primordial stone. The object, which came to be known as the Dorchester pot, was a marvel. Standing only 4.5 inches high, it was composed of a zinc and silver alloy. Its surface was exquisitely decorated with detailed floral patterns and a wreath inlaid with pure silver. The discovery was so remarkable it was reported in the June 1852 issue of Scientific American, which described it as a curious and unknown vessel and noted the sheer wonder of finding such a delicate work of art embedded in rock that predated life itself. Today, however, the academic consensus tells a much less exciting story. The prevailing theory dismisses the original report as a simple, if spectacular, mistake. Archaeologists suggest the pot was not ancient at all, but was likely a more modern artifact, perhaps a candlestick holder or part of an ornate pipe from the 17th or 18th century. They argue it was never inside the rock, but was merely lying amongst the debris after the explosion. In the chaos and confusion of the moment, the theory goes,
The workmen simply made an error, and a local legend was born from their misinterpretation. It's a rational explanation that requires no paradigm shift, just the acceptance of human error. But is it plausible to dismiss the direct testimony of multiple experienced quarrymen? These were men who worked with stone every day. To suggest they couldn't differentiate between an object blasted from the solid interior of a rock and one that was simply lying on the ground seems convenient. And the Dorchester pot is hardly an isolated case. In 1885, a similar story unfolded at a foundry in Austria. A worker named Riedel was breaking apart a block of tertiary period coal, many millions of years old, when he found a strange machined metal cube deep inside. Known as the Wolfsegg iron, the object was nearly a perfect cube, with a precise, deep incision running around its circumference. Like the pot, it was a clear product of intelligent manufacturing found where no such object should ever be. And just like the pot, its story was later dismissed. Skeptics now claim it was either a misidentified meteorite or, more likely, the discarded head of a miner's pick that fell into a fissure and became encased in lignite. Once again, the explanation defaults to a simple mistake, a misidentification by an unreliable, unscientific witness.
If we dare to take the original eyewitness accounts at face value, these objects tell a staggering story. The Dorchester pot wasn't a primitive tool. It was a sophisticated work of art, implying a culture with advanced metallurgical knowledge and a refined aesthetic sensibility 600 million years ago. The Wolfsegg iron, found entombed in the very fuel of the Industrial Revolution, hints at a forgotten industrial age in the impossibly deep past, a time of machines and manufacturing millions of years before our own. These artifacts, the pot from the pudding stone, the cube from the coal, begin to form a disturbing pattern. They are pieces of a mosaic of a forgotten history, one where high technology and refined artistry existed in epochs that our textbooks assure us were devoid of any intelligent life. We are left with two starkly different interpretations of the past. Were the stories of these incredible finds all just a series of unfortunate mistakes, tall tales, and amateur misidentifications? Or are they genuine, physical relics of worlds that have been lost to time, their existence systematically denied simply because they shatter the history we have so carefully constructed? The mainstream dismissal of these discoveries often relies on the idea that they are hoaxes or errors. But this raises an even deeper question. Why is there such powerful resistance to even considering the alternative? Our investigation must now turn from the artifacts themselves to the wall of academic silence that surrounds them, to ask why the verdict of science so often seems to be decided before all the evidence is heard.
Science, at its best, is a process of disciplined doubt. Skepticism is its most vital tool, the sharp scalpel that separates verifiable fact from fiction, wishful thinking, and outright fraud. For every extraordinary claim we have explored, there exists a wall of this powerful, necessary skepticism. It is a wall built of logic, reason, and a deep respect for evidence. But we must ask a difficult question. At what point does a protective wall become the wall of a prison, locking out any possibility that does not conform to our current understanding of the world? It is time to fairly examine the bricks that form this formidable barrier to a different version of the past. The primary argument used to dismiss these out-of-place artifacts is entirely reasonable. Nature is a master imitator. Geologists have a term for objects that look artificial but are naturally formed: geofacts. Through processes like concretion, minerals can aggregate into perfect spheres. Weathering and erosion can carve stone in ways that mimic tool use. The argument,
rooted in the principle of Occam's razor, is that the simplest explanation, a natural one, should always be preferred over a complex, paradigm-shifting one. The second brick in the wall is the long and unfortunate history of hoaxes. From the infamous Piltdown Man to countless lesser frauds, archaeology has been burned before. This history has bred an institutional caution that borders on suspicion, where any anomalous find is immediately scrutinized as a potential deception. But the most powerful argument, the one that disqualifies most of these finds from serious academic study, is the lack of provenance. Provenance is an object's biography, a clear, unbroken, and professionally documented chain of custody from the moment of its discovery. The Koso artifact, the Dorchester pot, the Wolf Seg iron, none of them have it. They were found by miners, quarrymen, and rockhounds, not by archaeologists during a controlled dig. They were often handled by amateurs, kept in private collections, and in some cases lost entirely. To a scientist, an artifact without provenance is just an anecdote. It has no context. It is, for all intents and purposes, inadmissible as evidence. And here we arrive at the great but. While these arguments are sound, do they not create an impossible catch-22? The very nature of these discoveries, found deep within solid rock or ancient coal seams, means they will almost never be found in a conventional archaeological dig. They are found by industrial workers, by accident. To demand that a 19th century miner provide the same level of sterile, documented provenance as a modern university team is to create a standard of proof that can never be met. This raises an unsettling question. Is the scientific method being used as a tool for open-minded investigation or as a gatekeeping mechanism to summarily dismiss any evidence that does not conform to our current understanding of the world? This phenomenon has been described by some researchers as a knowledge filter. It's not a conspiracy, but an inherent, subconscious bias within the scientific establishment. Careers, reputations, and entire departments are built upon the foundation of the current historical model. Anomalous data that threatens this foundation is not just an inconvenience, it represents a professional threat. Therefore, it is often ignored, ridiculed, or explained away with a zeal that goes beyond healthy skepticism. As the philosopher of science Thomas Kuhn observed, science rarely changes its mind gracefully. It progresses through violent paradigm shifts, where the old model doesn't just get updated, it collapses under the weight of too much contrary evidence. This knowledge filter ensures that the puzzle of our deep past is only ever assembled using the pieces that already fit the picture on the box. Any piece that suggests a different image entirely is discarded as defective. So, we are left to ponder the nature of this wall. Is it a necessary guardian of objective truth, protecting the integrity of science from a flood of fantasy? Or has it become a prison of dogma, preventing us from seeing a history of our world that is far grander, older, and more mysterious than we ever imagined? We have examined the impossible artifacts. We have confronted the wall of skepticism that is built to deny them. Now we must take the final, daring step. We must ask, what if they are real? It is time to venture beyond the wall and explore the breathtaking implications of a past we were told could never exist.
Let us, for a moment, step away from the safety of accepted history. Let us suspend our disbelief and engage in a breathtaking thought experiment. What if the skepticism is misplaced? What if the Koso artifact is exactly what it appears to be? What if the Klerksdorp spheres are not a trick of geology, and the Dorchester pot was truly sealed within 600-million-year-old rock? If even a single one of these out-of-place artifacts is genuine, the implications are not just profound, they are world-shattering. our entire model of history would instantly become obsolete. The familiar linear progression, a slow, predictable climb from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age to the wonders of our modern world, would be revealed as a fiction. A comforting story we told ourselves based on incomplete and perhaps misleading evidence. A single, authenticated artifact from a deep, impossible past would prove that our civilization is not the first. It would prove that history is not a straight line ascending towards the present, but something far more mysterious, a great repeating cycle. This idea of cyclical history is not new. It echoes in the oldest myths and traditions of our world. The ancient Vedic texts of India speak of the yugas, vast ages of spiritual and technological enlightenment followed by dark ages of decline and collapse. Plato wrote of the magnificent island of Atlantis, a highly advanced civilization swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. Cultures from every continent tell stories of a great flood, a global cataclysm that wiped the world clean to begin anew. Are these all just primitive fables? Or could they be the faint, distorted cultural memories of a previous cycle, the last surviving whispers of a global, forgotten civilization? But this immediately raises the most obvious and important question. If such advanced civilizations existed, where is all the evidence? Where are the buried ruins of their gleaming cities, the fossilized remains of their machines, the remnants of their vast road networks? The answer is as simple as it is humbling. Deep time. Our minds are not equipped to comprehend the immense timescale we are considering. What would be left of our own civilization after just 1 million years, a mere blink in geological terms? Our steel skyscrapers would corrode into dust. Our concrete highways would crumble and be overgrown. The relentless forces of erosion, glaciation, volcanic activity, and plate tectonics would grind our world into nothing. Over tens of millions of years, entire continents are subducted into the Earth's mantle, their surfaces completely recycled. The vast majority of any civilization, no matter how advanced, would be utterly and completely annihilated, leaving no trace. All that could possibly survive would be a handful of small, incredibly durable objects, or things that by sheer chance were fossilized deep within the Earth's crust, protected from the destructive forces of the surface. They would be found only by accident, in mines and quarries, exactly like the artifact we have examined. The scarcity of evidence, therefore, may not be evidence of absence. Instead, it might be the precise signature we should expect from a civilization that existed in the impossibly deep past. This new blueprint for history suggests a profound reevaluation of our place in the cosmos. We see ourselves as the pinnacle of 4.5 billion years of planetary evolution, the first species to split the atom and reach for the stars. But perhaps we are simply the latest in a long, forgotten lineage. Perhaps we are a species with amnesia, unknowingly building our world upon the dust and bones of empires so great their existence has been erased by time itself. We spend so much time looking to the distant stars, searching for signs of other intelligent life. But maybe the greatest alien intelligence we could ever hope to find is the one that existed right here, beneath our feet, in the lost epochs of our own planet's history. This doesn't just change our past, it changes everything. Our journey has taken us from the sun-scorched mountains of California to the primordial mines of South Africa and deep into the ancient rock of a 19th century quarry. We have unearthed objects that whisper of an impossible past, a spark of technology from before the age of man, perfectly machined spheres from the dawn of life, and delicate works of art sealed in stone for 600 million years. These are the glitches in our timeline, the artifacts that refuse to fit neatly into the story we have written for ourselves. We are left at a crossroads of belief. One path is simple, comfortable, and requires no revision of history. It is the path of dismissal, where every one of these finds is a mistake, a natural formation, or a clever hoax. The other path is far more unsettling. It suggests that our entire understanding of the past is fundamentally incomplete. It forces us to accept that we may be a species with amnesia, living amongst the ruins of forgotten worlds without even realizing it. The evidence is not conclusive, but the questions it raises are profound. What these artifacts ultimately provide is not a definitive answer, but a sense of breathtaking possibility. They suggest that our known history is not the story of intelligence on Earth, but simply our story. It may be only the latest chapter in a book of immense age, its preceding pages torn out and turned to dust by the relentless forces of time and cataclysm. The ground beneath our very feet is a library of these lost chapters, and we have barely begun to read. The search for knowledge continues, and perhaps the greatest truth of all is that the story of this world is far grander and far more mysterious than we have ever been told.
In 1852, the town of Dorchester, Massachusetts, was a place of explosive industry. At Meeting House Hill, workers were blasting their way through a colossal deposit of what is known as Roxbury pudding stone. This is not ordinary rock. It's a Precambrian geological conglomerate, a chaotic fusion of stone fragments formed an estimated 600 million years ago, long before the first complex life crawled upon the land. Following one particularly powerful blast, as the dust and smoke began to clear, the workers noticed something extraordinary amidst the shattered rubble. There, in two halves, lay a small, metallic, bell-shaped vessel, an object that had, by all accounts, been blasted out from the inside of the solid primordial stone. The object, which came to be known as the Dorchester pot, was a marvel. Standing only 4.5 inches high, it was composed of a zinc and silver alloy. Its surface was exquisitely decorated with detailed floral patterns and a wreath inlaid with pure silver. The discovery was so remarkable it was reported in the June 1852 issue of Scientific American, which described it as a curious and unknown vessel and noted the sheer wonder of finding such a delicate work of art embedded in rock that predated life itself. Today, however, the academic consensus tells a much less exciting story. The prevailing theory dismisses the original report as a simple, if spectacular, mistake. Archaeologists suggest the pot was not ancient at all, but was likely a more modern artifact, perhaps a candlestick holder or part of an ornate pipe from the 17th or 18th century. They argue it was never inside the rock, but was merely lying amongst the debris after the explosion. In the chaos and confusion of the moment, the theory goes, the workmen simply made an error, and a local legend was born from their misinterpretation. It's a rational explanation that requires no paradigm shift, just the acceptance of human error. But is it plausible to dismiss the direct testimony of multiple experienced quarrymen? These were men who worked with stone every day. To suggest they couldn't differentiate between an object blasted from the solid interior of a rock and one that was simply lying on the ground seems convenient. And the Dorchester pot is hardly an isolated case. In 1885, a similar story unfolded at a foundry in Austria. A worker named Riedel was breaking apart a block of tertiary period coal, many millions of years old, when he found a strange machined metal cube deep inside. Known as the Wolfsegg iron, the object was nearly a perfect cube, with a precise, deep incision running around its circumference. Like the pot, it was a clear product of intelligent manufacturing found where no such object should ever be.
and just like the pot, its story was later dismissed. Skeptics now claim it was either a misidentified meteorite or, more likely, the discarded head of a miner's pick that fell into a fissure and became encased in lignite. Once again, the explanation defaults to a simple mistake, a misidentification by an unreliable, unscientific witness.
If we dare to take the original eyewitness accounts at face value, these objects tell a staggering story. The Dorchester pot wasn't a primitive tool. It was a sophisticated work of art, implying a culture with advanced metallurgical knowledge and a refined aesthetic sensibility 600 million years ago. The Wolfsegg iron, found entombed in the very fuel of the Industrial Revolution, hints at a forgotten industrial age in the impossibly deep past, a time of machines and manufacturing millions of years before our own. These artifacts, the pot from the pudding stone, the cube from the coal, begin to form a disturbing pattern. They are pieces of a mosaic of a forgotten history, one where high technology and refined artistry existed in epochs that our textbooks assure us were devoid of any intelligent life. We are left with two starkly different interpretations of the past. Were the stories of these incredible finds all just a series of unfortunate mistakes, tall tales, and amateur misidentifications? Or are they genuine, physical relics of worlds that have been lost to time, their existence systematically denied simply because they shatter the history we have so carefully constructed? The mainstream dismissal of these discoveries often relies on the idea that they are hoaxes or errors. But this raises an even deeper question. Why is there such powerful resistance to even considering the alternative? Our investigation must now turn from the artifacts themselves to the wall of academic silence that surrounds them, to ask why the verdict of science so often seems to be decided before all the evidence is heard.
Science, at its best, is a process of disciplined doubt. Skepticism is its most vital tool, the sharp scalpel that separates verifiable fact from fiction, wishful thinking, and outright fraud. For every extraordinary claim we have explored, there exists a wall of this powerful, necessary skepticism. It is a wall built of logic, reason, and a deep respect for evidence. But we must ask a difficult question. At what point does a protective wall become the wall of a prison, locking out any possibility that does not conform to our current understanding of the world? It is time to fairly examine the bricks that form this formidable barrier to a different version of the past. The primary argument used to dismiss these out-of-place artifacts is entirely reasonable. Nature is a master imitator. Geologists have a term for objects that look artificial but are naturally formed: geofacts. Through processes like concretion, minerals can aggregate into perfect spheres. Weathering and erosion can carve stone in ways that mimic tool use. The argument, rooted in the principle of Occam's razor, is that the simplest explanation, a natural one, should always be preferred over a complex, paradigm-shifting one. The second brick in the wall is the long and unfortunate history of hoaxes. From the infamous Piltdown Man to countless lesser frauds, archaeology has been burned before. This history has bred an institutional caution that borders on suspicion, where any anomalous find is immediately scrutinized as a potential deception. But the most powerful argument, the one that disqualifies most of these finds from serious academic study, is the lack of provenance. Provenance is an object's biography, a clear, unbroken, and professionally documented chain of custody from the moment of its discovery. The Coso artifact, the Dorchester pot, the Wolfsegg iron, none of them have it. They were found by miners, quarrymen, and rockhounds, not by archaeologists during a controlled dig. They were often handled by amateurs, kept in private collections, and in some cases, lost entirely.
To a scientist, an artifact without provenance is just an anecdote. It has no context. It is, for all intents and purposes, inadmissible as evidence. And here we arrive at the great but. While these arguments are sound, do they not create an impossible catch-22? The very nature of these discoveries, found deep within solid rock or ancient coal seams, means they will almost never be found in a conventional archaeological dig. They are found by industrial workers, by accident. To demand that a 19th century miner provide the same level of sterile, documented provenance as a modern university team is to create a standard of proof that can never be met. This raises an unsettling question. Is the scientific method being used as a tool for open-minded investigation or as a gatekeeping mechanism to summarily dismiss any evidence that does not conform to our current understanding of the world?
This phenomenon has been described by some researchers as a knowledge filter. It's not a conspiracy, but an inherent, subconscious bias within the scientific establishment. Careers, reputations, and entire departments are built upon the foundation of the current historical model. Anomalous data that threatens this foundation is not just an inconvenience, it represents a professional threat. Therefore, it is often ignored, ridiculed, or explained away with a zeal that goes beyond healthy skepticism. As the philosopher of science Thomas Kuhn observed, science rarely changes its mind gracefully. It progresses through violent paradigm shifts, where the old model doesn't just get updated, it collapses under the weight of too much contrary evidence. This knowledge filter ensures that the puzzle of our deep past is only ever assembled using the pieces that already fit the picture on the box. Any piece that suggests a different image entirely is discarded as defective. So, we are left to ponder the nature of this wall. Is it a necessary guardian of objective truth, protecting the integrity of science from a flood of fantasy? Or has it become a prison of dogma, preventing us from seeing a history of our world that is far grander, older, and more mysterious than we ever imagined? We have examined the impossible artifacts. We have confronted the wall of skepticism that is built to deny them. Now we must take the final, daring step. We must ask, what if they are real? It is time to venture beyond the wall and explore the breathtaking implications of a past we were told could never exist.